Greetings, and welcome to Will Insecurity Now Eat Your Homework. It's been a few weeks now of work at home, and maybe you've thrived at it, but like many you just survived. And that survival instinct, while commendable, isn't really sustainable. It's time to look now at your home security, to look inward so that work at home can continue to work for you and your organization. This is a short presentation designed to give most people a decent look at their security posture and what action items they can take in order to improve upon it. First off, my name is Steve McGowan and I head up 360 Secure. We provide virtual CSO or Chief Security Officer services to organizations to provide them with help and guidance, and we also provide a great deal of application security audits and vulnerability assessments in various industries like retail, banking, finance, insurance, healthcare, and even some military applications. And while I normally deal with businesses requiring much higher-ended security requirements, I've been asked a lot about this work at home stuff, and subsequently I decided to package this together so that people could use it freely. And I really have nothing to sell you here. So to begin with, if you think this is you and you're dealing with nation states on a regular everyday basis and handling millions of personal health information records, then I would suggest this is probably not for you. We can certainly help you out, as you will need more of a framework to deal with that kind of complexity. However, most of us, we're just not like that. Most of us, well, we're just trying to get 20 people into a virtual conference-filled room with buttons all over the place, and we have problem users who can't get on, and we are software that we're completely unfamiliar with, and we have all sorts of cloud applications like Dropbox. Am I putting something in somebody else's Dropbox with the right permissions so that they can read it, but other people who go into their Dropbox can read it? What is going on with all that? And we have our infrastructure that all of a sudden now is some Wi-Fi router that we bought in 2003 on special at Best Buy. And if we have problems, well, I guess the CAT is the closest thing we have to local IT around here. So now, with all of this, now we have security hanging over our heads. And we're sort of overwhelmed with all of this. And really, it doesn't have to be that overwhelming. So, what are we dealing with here in the majority? Well, as Sun Tzu likes to say in The Ancient Art of War, one must know their enemy in order to defend against their enemy. What I have here is a number of residential subscribers, most of them in green. The two in blue are two of your colleagues, employees working at home, and the blue building is their office. And contrary to popular mythology that somehow there are these evil, mysterious masterminds in hoodies stalking you, no, the real enemy is automation. Bots. Bots will scan 365 by 24 looking for easy targets. Once they find easy targets, that's where the focus will be. Once we have focus, they will attack with possibly humans involved in order to gain ransom from you through ransomware, or to attack your organization to steal data and otherwise gain other forms of nefarious access. They will even reach out to attack your fellow colleagues with the information that they've gathered. So all in all, they can make things a pretty lousy day for work at home users. So that's kind of scary sounding, right? And you're really busy. And the IT support from your CAT is sadly lacking. What to do? Well, let's just simplify. I'm going to show you 4 things that I'll cycle through one at a time. You do these 4 things and I guarantee your security posture goes up to a level that the bots simply pick on someone else. Now the first one that we'll go through is quite simply slow down. There is a lot of pressure on us to be perfect at this with virtually no training. We want our businesses to continue, and we're afraid that if we're not perfect, that somehow they won't. But as many of you are struggling with this, so is everybody else. So simply put, Stop trying too hard. One surefire way to slow down is to make sure you embrace your company IT work at home policy. In this way, you will be set free from support issues where you may be able to get some remote support once in a while for things that go wrong, as well as help you deal with potential security issues. If you don't have a company IT work at home policy, here are some key pointers that should be in one. Don't ever let family members ever use your work equipment, and do not do business on your home equipment. With your business computers, make sure you lock your screens after 5 minutes of idle time. Use all company equipment standard firewall, AVS, and VPN, because that will allow you to get better support even if you have your own at home. Use company supplied backup mechanisms if available. And finally, if you're in a BYOD situation, you'll need special care to do all of the above, but there should still be a company policy that follows BYOD. So in the long run, what you want to avoid is any urges to go get my other PC and fix whatever it is that doesn't work right now, because that's the sort of thing that lands you in all sorts of trouble from a security point of view, as well as from a support point of view. And remember, your remote IT support is likely just learning how to do all of this as well. The same goes for your software tools. Now we'll have lots and lots of different conferencing tools, file sharing tools, SaaS-based tools, etc. And you may decide that you like this one over another. However, I would encourage you to always use the company best practice, whatever the company has selected. And this helps because one of the things that you're going to find is when you phone these other vendors, these third-party suppliers, their support lines are overwhelmed at this point, and you're going to get absolutely no worthwhile support whatsoever. So it may help you that you can call someone else within the company or even get some kind of remote IT support on this stuff. The other thing is that if there are vulnerabilities in these products, and there always are, and I'll go through that in this moment, but IT can help you manage those vulnerabilities. They'll know which ones impact all of their employees, and they'll be able to help you provide assistance in how to do workarounds around them. But one of the most important things that I want to point out here is that most of the security issues that you're going to have in using any of these software tools really lie in misconfiguration. It's how we use them that counts. So one of the things, if you're a key producer, so you do lots of conferencing, you set up the conference calls, you should really strive for a single tool to gain that kind of familiarity that you need so that you don't misconfigure it, and that will only help you. So one key takeaway here is that you're the greatest vulnerability when you misconfigure things, and quite frankly, you're still the greatest vulnerability even when you don't. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So here we have a confirmed Zoom security risk from last year, very well known. But quite frankly, if you have enough knowledge and enough support, you'll know that you change your settings and this security risk can go away. That doesn't negate necessarily the fact that you can exceed whole new levels of stupid simply by going into Zoom and configuring your meeting ID to be your personal ID and then require absolutely no password on it. And of course, there's been lots of examples of this over the last couple of weeks. We've had cases, this one on the right went viral with somebody going to the bathroom and not realizing that their video camera was still on. And the one on the left was essentially the Boris Johnson having a cabinet meeting, and he was very proud, so he tweeted it out. But in his screenshot, he kind of included his meeting ID, which wasn't too swift. And make no mistake, we have hacker tools out there that we can use, and we can farm all sorts of meeting IDs, and that can expose your company real quick. Well, I wanted to avoid the topic of specific platforms, largely as I feel that the issues are the same across all platforms, really. The popularity of Zoom and the large amount of media coverage that it gets over its security issues meant that a lot of people were asking me about it, so I decided to include this as an addendum to the presentation. Subsequently, what is Zoom bombing? Zoom bombing is when people show up on your conferences and possibly you display images that you really don't want displayed within your conference. Now, as I said in the previous slide, this is squarely on you. What it comes down to is don't share your meeting links insecurely, like putting them on Twitter. Don't unclick the password requirement. And if you're going to use Zoom, use the waiting room feature. That way you can admit whoever you want within your meeting and know who they are. In terms of Zoom security vulnerabilities, as of April 5th, Zoom's done a pretty good job actually in cleaning a lot of these up. However, I would point out even the ones that they have fixed, most of these all had reasonable workarounds, quite frankly. And in terms of Zoom privacy issues, yes, you might have heard that they allow a lot of information such as email addresses, etc., to escape. However, my particular point of view is that almost every cloud platform does this. Zoom took it to a level that was probably too much, and I think they fixed a lot of these things as of April 5th. But some still exist, and subsequently, my verdict and recommendation is if it's configured right, it's still pretty good to be used. If it's configured wrong, it will be a mess. Subsequently, make sure it's configured right, and if you really do require the utmost in privacy, then you may want to use something else. However, I would always caution you that almost every cloud platform has some degree of privacy issues, and at least these are the ones that you will know, and you'll be able to manage that. If you have any questions on that specifically, please contact me with the contact information at the end. And last but not least, that saying, well, it's against policy, but, because you've got some issue going on and you can't resolve it and you want to call somebody, and you call somebody, but there's been some kind of breach and somebody's figured out how to intercept your support capability, and the next thing you know, you're handing out passwords because you want to get up and going, and you're going against the exact policy that you're not supposed to. So all in all, what we're saying is just slow right down, pay attention to policy, and that will keep you a heck of a lot safer. Next, we're going to go into updating your infrastructure and platforms and what we need to look at there. Okay, so we walk into the typical home environment, and what do we have here? Well, we have the router from 2003. We have a machine you kind of keep in pretty good shape because you like to use it for work sometimes, like email and stuff like that, or the kids use it for school or whatever. And then you have some nefarious thing that, well, it's loaded with viruses. Nobody actually updates anything on it, and God knows what's going on with it at any given time. So now we drop your machine in, and welcome to the new neighborhood. So we got to deal with that because you've just now placed a rather pristine machine with Microsoft Windows Update, Microsoft Windows Defender for your firewall and ABS, in a pretty insecure environment all around. So how do we address this? So in terms of stepwise order, the first things first, we got to deal with that router. So if you haven't upgraded your router in quite some time, chances are the firmware is very out of date, and Wi-Fi routers have had notorious problems with security in the past. So we want to make sure we upgrade that firmware first thing. The second thing is we want to remove any default credentials to the admin access. So a lot of the manufacturers ship their routers with admin user ID, admin password, and we want to get rid of that because everybody knows that in the dark community. Third thing, we want to remove remote admin access. Hey, let's face it, we're ridden to the house. What the heck do we need to access the administrative panel on the router for in remote mode? We just don't. Just turn it off. There's no reason to have it. Make sure there is a hard-to-guess SSID password. We have tools that can crack routers wide open if you use anything even close to a word in the English language or one of the common first 1,000 passwords that a lot of people often use. And you may want to actually obfuscate the SSID name. That's the name that's broadcast that you look up on your phone and you see this is the name of the router. There's no reason to have your last name or your address there, as that just shows everybody where that the device is actually associated to. So once we've done that, then we want to go to your work device. Make sure your auto updates still work, because they may actually go back to your corporate server. Some organizations like to control their own Windows update. Make sure, if you want to have any relationship between this device and, say, a printer or another device, update your firewall rules to only allow those devices. So you have to think about the new threats in your new environment that's no longer so corporate. And the third thing is think about backups, because you may have been in an environment where you could do a backup over the internet, or I'm sorry, over the corporate LAN, but here that may not be a thing that you want to be doing here. So you might have to have some other mechanism, or you might have to come up with your own, because there really was none before. But running without backing up your computer is a nasty, nasty problem waiting to happen. And then finally, we might want to go to these other machines that you might want to collaborate with. Maybe we've already said that you shouldn't be doing business on your home computers. However, we recognize the fact that you might have printers off print servers. You might have to go back and forth between email. You might want to do remote desktop because you got this great big monster screen that you want to use. Just make sure that you now update it up to that new standard of having automatic operating system updates, firewall, and AVS mandatory if that's what you want to do. And as far as this thing over here on the left, yeah, we just want that thing firewalled off. Anything, colloquially speaking, non-managed, yeah, internet only. Don't let it touch anything that is within your home. Secondly, in terms of VPN, in terms of upgrading and changing your access, you want to make sure you install VPN clients on your work machines if you haven't done so already. Now, there are two different types of VPNs. There's a full tunnel mode VPN, which takes all of your traffic, no matter what it is, and sends it to terminate at corporate, which then it will be routed to the right place. So if you're watching Netflix, Netflix is actually going to go through corporate. And the split tunnel mode, which only sends the corporate traffic to headquarters, and all the internet traffic goes out through the normal internet access point. So the difference being, full tunnel gives you some advantages. If corporate has any tools for detecting malicious traffic, they'll still be in the game. If you use a lot of Microsoft Windows applications, there's going to be a lot of Microsoft Windows legacy headaches involved where you just want to tunnel everything to it. And essentially, it's like you're pretending you're part of the building. Whereas on the other hand, in split tunnel mode, one of the things that it gives you is a bit more privacy. So effectively, all the connections that you go outside for, you're going to go outside as per normal, not through corporate. And secondly, that's going to give you, generally speaking, a better kick in performance as well. You may or you may not have that as an option to select which one. And all you really want to make sure that you're cognizant of here is that if you're doing private stuff and you're on this, you probably want to disconnect the VPN when you do it. So that brings us to the next one of the really 4 important points, and that is passwords. Passwords are screamingly important, probably the most important of these 4 things, and I'll tell you why. So now we're on to the topic of passwords, and passwords are one of my favorite topics to discuss because they're the most wonderful attack vector for automation. So it's really not uncommon for bad guys to set up databases of 2 million password attempts in terms of brute forcing against a particular system. Very, very easy to do with an army of botnets. In fact, in one instance where we were being asked by a client to penetrate a system, we found out that there was no actual quality control on passwords, and people could put anything they wanted in there, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it turns out that we cracked over 20,000 subscriber accounts while only using a database of about 1,000 or so passwords. So that's how much of a vector passwords are to penetrating systems, and why you have to take very, very special care of them. In my point of view, there are only two acceptable means of setting passwords. One is the passphrase, and the other one is the password manager. So passphrase is simply that. It's a phrase, not just a word, that you can remember easily, but it can be very, very complex. So even though I tell you that my password is, I'm glad my password is a good one, it would probably take you 1,000 attempts to even be able to come up with that. So that is regarded as very, very strong by the algorithm that determines password quality. The other method is, of course, the password manager, which will store a bunch of passwords for each individual system. That will be a cryptic set of characters that nobody could ever guess in a zillion years. And that's all controlled by a single user ID and password to the password manager. Chrome is sort of an example of this. And essentially, the difference is that the passphrase, it's easier for multi-devices. So I find it much easier to remember this passphrase across my phone, across my tablet, across my computer without that much of an effort. Whereas the password manager, it's very good, but you have to ensure that the device itself is secure, aka back to that comment I made about putting screen lock on your business device even though it's now in the home, and protecting its use. In terms of password credential use, so for password frequency change, if you have quality passwords, it's just really not a thing anymore. It's not something that any of the professionals are recommending. Hopefully your ISIT organization doesn't use that anymore, because it just creates more problems than it's worth. But the one point I would really like to make is never, ever, ever share and reuse home and business credentials. So anything out here, you want to make sure has credentials that can never access in here. Because out here on the consumer side, that's where we're going to get the big thefts of 5 million sets of credentials from these consumer grade systems. And we do not want these coming back to be able to haunt us in here. And if you have something that's super critical that you want to really take really solid care of, you should really consider multi-factor authentication. It really is simple to use, and it supplies so much security to your risk profile. So it's based on the concept of something you know, basically a passphrase, which we just described, and something you have, which is basically a phone. So the idea is this: you log in as per normal, no big deal. Then the system in the back end issues a token or a number to your computer, to your phone, and then you get to say, either put in a number or click the check mark, is this you? And that validates that your password was actually entered by you, not just that your password was entered. And that's very, very secure and something to be considered for, say, your VPN. So now I want to talk to you guys about the fourth really simple thing to do, and that's social engineering. And in particular, being aware of phishing. Now, phishing is nothing new, and it's always been sort of scary. Actually, it's been really scary. But in this particular instance, with all of us working at home, this is going to take on a whole new meaning in terms of scariness. Largely because we're so physically separated, working in our basements across the country, that we'll have absolutely no idea what each other is actually doing on a given day. So we won't be able to detect weird patterns of when things are sent to us and what people are looking for. And the traffic in email for us to interact will increase greatly over things we would normally just talk about. And that creates a whole new attack surface, and our diligence is going to be tested. So what is spear phishing specifically? Well, it's not the Nigerian princess scam. right? Or the FedEx scam. This is where bad guys go mine LinkedIn and other social networks and figure out, okay, well, this is this guy, and I know what he does for a living, and he works for that guy, or that guy works for him, and that's their relationship. So what is it between those two that would make sense from the concept of context? So for instance, these are two people in marketing, so the context of a marketing budget makes sense, and so then you put in the text some sort of contextual amount of information that says, hey, you should be interested in this, and then we just spoof the email addresses, which are easy to get as well. And as part of the attachment or the payload, we insert something that can easily run executable code on your machine, and then poof, everything's done where you're owned, and ransomware ensues and all sorts of bad things happen. So this is very, very difficult to actually detect and to stop in any sort of proactive way. The other or second scariest phishing thing out there is the dreaded Office 360 credentials phish. So this is an actual one, but there are dozens of variants on this from 2017, where we've spoofed the Office 365 team and send you and your Office 365 account members some kind of nefarious email that looks like an official warning of your mailbox being full. So this account is almost full, and if you want to prevent your outgoing mail from getting errors, which in this world order that we're in would be very, very bad, click here and we'll add another 10 gigs for free. And a lot of people click on this. This particular one actually has the URL. Most of them have the URL hidden by some text, and the URL is linked to that text. So when you click on that, what happens is you get, of course, a wonderful Office 365 sign-in portal, except that it's not actually Office 365. It's some website on some nefarious server someplace, and you're going to enter your credentials in here, and if they did it really well, they're going to then take your credentials and send them to Office 365 and then actually sign you in. So to you, everything looks as per normal, but they've managed to get your user ID and password. And they can then rifle through your email looking for contacts, looking for passwords, looking for all sorts of crazy things that bring risk, massive amounts of risk to your personal life and to your company. So how do you stop this stuff, right? Well, really, there's just one golden rule. I've heard people say, well, here's how you spot phishing emails. No, don't even fool around with this. Don't click on even a known URL in a link in an email, ever. Don't click on any links in emails. There's just no point. If the email is from a reputable source, use your browser and just directly navigate to the content that the email points to. That's all. If it's some kind of internal link to file stores, etc., like that sort of stuff, at least it's very hard for the nefarious actor to simulate what that internal link is going to look like. So you can be a little bit more confident in it. But I might just copy and paste that link into an incognito or a private mode browser anyway. Be vigilant about this. So if you point and click to that link and it goes to some crazy place that you've never seen before, quit the browser, and then because it's in private or incognito mode, all the cookies will be not kept, and we won't have any history of the URL whatsoever, and we'll likely be okay as long as we didn't follow through on anything it was asking us to do. And if it seems fishy at all, don't click, just close the window. It's just not worth it. Secondly, know your organization's password change policies. So if an email is asking you to do something weird that you've never done before, like right now with this work at home regimen we're all under, do you think it makes sense to do a global password change? No, probably not. Does it seem like this is the normal password change process that your organization uses on a regular basis? If no, well then probably not. If you suspect anything, call the IT organization. They might be remote, but you should be able to call them and ask them, hey, what's going on? Is this normal? should I be doing this? Believe me, they will be thrilled that you called, rather than the subsequent call of trying to tell them, look, I think I've been hacked. I know you're remote, but we got to do something to wipe my machine. I'm completely off the air here. So don't be shy about calling and asking for help if you think something is out of order. Now, if we have suspicions, verify those suspicions out of band. So this actually happens all the time. So the nefarious actor spoofs an email, sends to Sally here, hey, I really need that budget report, Sally. And that seems like a normal thing, except Sally goes, yeah, that seems a little weird because, Bob, I sent it a month ago. And Bob goes, well, geez, I can't find it. Please update it again. So you've accomplished two things, right? You've ensured to the hacker that, in fact, this spoof actually worked, and he can try again until he gets to where he needs to go on you. He can work you over, essentially. And secondly, you've just validated that your email exists and you're a worthwhile and easy target. Whereas if you would have just picked up the phone and texted Bob and said, hey, I got this totally weird email from you about budget stuff. Didn't we do that last month? And Bob goes, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about, Sally. I haven't emailed you today at all. And then you know that this was basically an attack vector. Last but not least, beyond the four issues or the four keys that I mentioned, if you do detect anything, make sure you know in advance who to contact for security incident reporting. Somebody responsible for IT security, remote or not, needs to know that you've been penetrated or somebody's tried to penetrate you, because we need to protect not just you but your colleagues from similar attacks. And of course, the reason they're going after you and your colleagues is to get at company assets in the first place. So it's important for them to know so that they can be aware that this is an attack vector that's ongoing against their organization. So finally, work at home summary. Well, the bad news is that I'm really only scratching the surface in the time allotted here that I can give you. There are more detailed security risk postures that we can address with frameworks such as NIST 800-46, and quite frankly, we're happy to help. If you require such a thing, we have contact information at the end. But the good news is that most attacks are actually automated against residential subscribers. And they're relatively unsophisticated. So when people get penetrated, it's because they really didn't deal with these four things all that well. So if we do deal with these things all that very well, we should address 80-20 rules very, very simply. You'll have big gains in your home security posture and your confidence, and there'll be huge benefits for your companies if you all do this as well. So just a total win-win, and for really not that much work. And last but not least, if you have any concerns, comments, or questions, be sure to reach out and send me an email. After all, I'm lonely, I'm working at home, and I'm getting tired of doing vulnerability assessments without any human contact. But at any rate, we're always here to help. Thanks very much for listening to this presentation.